Yo Brollies, I heard you like knobs on your keyboard. Well, how many do you need? Because I have some extras here with the Skyloong GK75. This thing has a whopping 4 customizable knobs and possibly more given the number of options on the PCB. And not only that, these encoders are actually hot swappable, making them versatile to cater to your personal preference. Other than that, it features a standard exploded 75% layout, a non-conventional gasket design, tri-mode connectivity, and hot swappable switches. Oh, it also has an optional split spacebar feature to go along with it. With that being said, let's unbox this, crack it open, and let me share with you the rest of my thoughts. Let's get into it. For this video, the desk mat background of choice is the Voyager from Alpha Unlimited, designed by Maro House PH. This is not sponsored, but I'll put their links below if you're interested. Now, starting with the unboxing experience, right here we have the packaging with an image preview and some branding around. Upon opening the box, we have a bunch of items here. We have a couple of marketing paperwork, including the history of Skyloong's DIY keyboards. We also have the user manual here that unfortunately is written only in Chinese. But don't worry, I'll show you later an English version of this that you can find online. Inside this compartment, we have more accessories. We have a braided coiled cable that features a rather black and red colorway, which I don't think will match the color of the keyboard. But I have a perfect solution for that later, so don't worry about it. We also have a bunch of keycaps here that, if I have to guess, make up the complete kit for at least up to 87 keys. Aside from that, we have a USB Type-A to Type-C adapter, a couple of additional knobs made out of CNC aluminum. For some reasons, we also have a few silicone keycaps here, a wire keycap and switch puller, a bunch of screws, standoffs, and silicone washers, and some extra Skyloong Glacier silver switches. And lastly, we have the module for the optional split spacebar configuration. What I appreciate here in terms of the package content is this nice plastic dust cover, which proved to be useful at times. At first look and touch, this keyboard, although made out of a combination of plastic and aluminum, is definitely robust in terms of its structure, and it also has a decent weight to it of around 1.2 kilograms. In terms of the layout, we have the typical exploded 75% layout, but with one glaring difference, which is the absurd amount of knobs right here, which by the way is highly customizable via the software. I can think off the top of my head why would anyone need this amount of knobs on a keyboard, but I'm pretty sure some people will find this handy. And if not, you can easily remove it and replace it with normal switches. So having this option is definitely a plus and makes this keyboard fairly unique in its own way compared to most 75% keyboards. Now, while I'm not a total fan of the color of the alphanumeric keys, I like the overall look of these bundled keycaps and undeniably matches this Voyager desk mat, right? I also like the design of the aluminum case with chamfered edges all around, making it different from the typical sharp-edged keyboards. Flipping it on the front side, you'll see a better look at the said chamfered edges. Same here on the side with a slightly slanted form factor for ergonomics. It also features a high-profile design, which means the switches are completely hidden from sight. Flipping it on the back side, we have 3 holes for the cable routing channels. And turning it all over at the bottom, we have 5 rubber feet, 4 flip-out stands, 2 of which are shorter, and all of them has rubber tip as well. Pretty standard stuff nowadays. At the center, we have the switch for the tri-mode connectivity and a dedicated switch for changing between Windows and Mac OS. We also have here the 2.4 GHz USB dongle, nicely tucked inside, and the USB Type-C port recessed deeply into the bottom case. Having a plastic part on a wireless keyboard with aluminum chassis is extremely important in terms of wireless stability, and it's actually starting to get standard now with more and more keyboards offering tri-mode connectivity. So having a plastic bottom case or in between the chassis is quite understandable. Now, going back in front in terms of the keycaps, we have double shot PBT keycaps, and the double shot material actually covers the entire keycap, making the thickness quite substantial at around 1.5 to 1.6 millimeters, which helps with the overall sound signature. In terms of the switches, what we have here is Skyloong's own Glacier silver switch, which is linear with an actuation force of around 48 to 52 grams and a reduced travel distance of around 3.8 millimeters, which is ideal for gaming. It is lubed out of the factory and features a 2-stage spring. It is fairly smooth out of the box and is generally clacky in terms of its sound signature. Another thing is that this keyboard features hot swappable sockets, but in an old school north-facing orientation. In terms of the stabilizers, these stock stabilizers are pre-lubed out of the box, which is good to see, but as you'll hear later on the sound test, I think it needs a little bit more improvement. By the way, if you haven't noticed, the modifiers actually have a different switch on them, featuring Skyloong's Glacier Rose switch. which is a heavy tactile switch with around 65 grams of actuation force and with a reduced travel distance as well of 3.8mm. And although this would lead to a non-consistent typing feel, it allows the keyboard to have distinct feedback on its modifiers, especially on the spacebar. If this isn't your style, remember, this keyboard comes with a bunch of glacier silver switches, so no need to worry. As for the knobs, the mounted ones are noticeably different from the 2 additional knobs from the package, giving you more flexibility in terms of their look. Alright, so with the unboxing experience and parts overview crossed from our list, let's tear this keyboard apart and understand what are our options when it comes to further modifications. Tearing this keyboard apart is actually very easy and in a way, genius. Let me show you why. First, you have to remove the knobs, which to be honest is a bit challenging given the amount of surface area you can grip. My method here might not be advisable, but I use the keycap puller to carefully lift the knobs. Next, and this is very important, there are 2 screws hidden underneath the stands that you need to remove. After that, just look how simple it is. You can now lift the aluminum top cover off. No need to remove any other screws as it is attached to the plastic bottom case using magnets. Absolutely clever. As I've pointed out earlier, this keyboard features a non-conventional gasket mount design with the gaskets directly integrated into the middle silicone dampener. While this allows for better sound dampening and isolation between materials, it doesn't offer any type of flex or movement that are otherwise available on a standard gasket mount keyboard. Now, since I'm curious, I also removed the keycaps and switches so we can take a closer look at the construction and design of the PCB and plate combo. After that, we have to remove the screws around the plate. There are 2 sets of screws, the longer ones which go through all the way to the bottom case and the shorter ones that hold the PCB and plate together. Again, you can choose to take advantage of the split spacebar layout by simply swapping out this module. Next, we can now slowly and carefully lift the PCB and plate combo so as to not damage the wires underneath it. We have a total of 3 connections, one for the USB Type-C port, another one for the tri-mode connectivity, and one for the battery. Having 3 different connections is a bit of a hassle, but is safer compared to when the port and switches are integrated with the PCB. Here we have a very lightweight bottom case foam, and then we have the daughter boards for the said connections, and a decent 4000 mAh of battery. Now the plate is FR4, which is made out of high density fiber, offering a good balance between rigidity and flex, and as you can tell, we also have the encoders directly attached to it here. Apparently, these encoders get connected to the PCB not by the standard hot swap sockets, but with dedicated pins. So technically, you can also put the encoders here on the left side, providing that the case allows for it. Looking at the case, I think you can place an encoder in replacement of the escape key. Looking closer at this encoder, on the surface, the housing looks similar to the standard mechanical switches, and you can even open it using the standard Cherry MX style switch opener. Inside, you'll see the actual encoder itself with the pins. Obviously, there's no need to lube this one. Now, removing it from the plate, however, is slightly different, which is from the sides. Next, we have the silicone dampener with the integrated gaskets around it and the PCB itself. The hot swap sockets are interestingly made by CIY. Now, while putting the pieces back together, I noticed it has a built-in mic right here for the potential audio visualizer, which is pretty common with Skyloong and Geek keyboards. Now, I don't want to waste your time, so here's a quick time-lapse of the rebuilding process. Now, let's talk about its other features, starting with the NKRO performance. On Bluetooth connection, we only have up to 6 key rollover, which means you can only press up to 6 keys at the same time. But in both wired and 2.4 GHz wireless connection, we have full NKRO, which means you can press as many keys as you want at the same time without conflicts. Next, let me share with you the online version of the user manual so you have a bit of an idea about its functionalities. I'm not going to tackle this one by one, but what's important here is that you can connect this keyboard up to 3 devices, 2 via Bluetooth and 1 via the 2.4 GHz wireless connection. It is also compatible with both Windows and Mac OS with a dedicated switch at the bottom, and I actually was able to confirm that the software is also compatible with Mac OS, which is nice. Aside from that, we have a bunch of standard lighting effects, which I'll show you right now. I'll just breeze through all of them here, but we do have 2 sets of lighting modes, the standard rainbow effects and another set of reactive lighting modes. Of course, you can change the brightness and speed of the animation, you get the idea. As for the software, we still have this confusing and intimidating software from Skyloong, and I'm also not going to dive deep into this. But what's important here is that you can change a key function to a different primary key, number pad, media shortcuts, and mouse functions, you get the idea. The customizable layers are the Windows and Mac OS layers. However, I wasn't able to figure out how to use the layer 3 and the driver layers, and I'm not willing to waste my time tinkering with that. What's important here is that you can customize the function of the knobs to not only act as a volume knob, but also pretty much any available functions here, including mimicking the key combination to function as zoom in and zoom out, which actually works in applications that support it. Other than that, we have the usual lighting effects customization and macros. Now, before I give you my final thoughts about this keyboard, here's a quick sound test for you guys. Alright, so I mentioned earlier that the stock coiled cable doesn't match the colorway of this keyboard. So with that, I got this pastel cyan coiled cable from Cooler Master that perfectly matches the teal accent on this keyboard. It features a 5-pin quick disconnect aviator connector and is made out of quality nylon, metal, and PVC materials. This is also not sponsored, but I'll put the links below if you're interested. Now, for my final thoughts, what I like about this keyboard is the uniqueness and flexibility when it comes to the number of rotary encoders or knobs. Personally, I don't have a specific use for this, but I can imagine some people can take advantage of this that they otherwise won't have with other keyboards. I also like the build quality and how easy it is to take apart, as well as the overall design and functionalities, including the stock switches and keycaps. It also sounds fairly decent out of the box with a little room for improvement on the stabilizers. However, I don't like the gasket mount design of this keyboard with little to no flexibility when it comes to the flex characteristics and overall typing feel. Overall, I can recommend this keyboard for those who need this absurd amount of knobs and for the overall value considering the price for this fully built keyboard. And there you have it guys, thank you for watching. Thanks to Skyloong for sending this in and to Cooler Master for the cold cable. You can get this using the links below. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you appreciate this video, and see you next time. Have a great day guys, you're awesome.